Let's say hi to Brian in Minnesota next up on Trunk Nation. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Eddie. Great to talk to you again. A couple things I wanted to throw at you. First of all, would you ever consider having Charlie Kendall on from the old Metal Shop show? That show was hugely influential back in the day on metal radio, and he's doing a new version of it. I know it's a competitor, radio show, but I think there's a lot of history with it that you could really get into a deep interview with him. And I've got another thing after you.
Well, Brian, it's not a competitor at all. I don't look at it that way at all. I mean, I knew of that show when it was on and all that back in the day, so I don't look at it that way at all. But the reason why I don't know if that would be of interest makes sense, and I'm just going to be straight here. My understanding of that show was that he didn't have anything to do with it but voice it. He would just go in and record the voice stuff. It was a scripted show, and somebody else did the music and scripted it all. So it's not like my understanding is, it's not like he sat there behind a console and actually picked the music and did all that. He just basically was the voice of it. And that right, for syndicated shows, it's pretty common. Like Dee Snider, who's had a syndicated show forever called House of Hair, Dee will be the first to tell you he has nothing to do with the show beyond putting his voice. He gets a script, he reads it, he sends in the script, and they put the music together around it. So those produced shows, the people are really hiring voice people more so than they're hiring people who are super passionate into the music. Now, I don't know Charlie at all, but that's what my understanding of that show was back in the day, because I knew the guy who produced it. It was a guy named Don Kay. He did the whole thing. And when we used to when we used to talk, because I was working for a label then, so we used to try to get our music on that show, and I would call Don, and he'd be the guy you'd work to get it played. Don did everything with that show, and Charlie was just the voice of it. He was, there are voice talents that it's just like doing a voiceover for anything. You get a script, you read it, and you're done. You don't really have much to do with the actual show. So I'm pretty sure that that's the case, which, that's why I'm saying I don't know, where there would be to talk about if that was really his role with that show.
Well, the thing is, he's got a new version of it called Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop, and I think he's much more involved with it now than just being the voiceover talent like back in the day. I mean, he's been making like podcast rounds and stuff, promoting it and talking about it, and I've chatted with him briefly about it online, and I just thought he'd be an interesting guest because that show's got such a great history and had so many loyal listeners. The other thing I wanted to mention to you was the Judas Priest Rock-a-Rolla 50th anniversary remixed and remastered release that recently came out. I don't know if you know it or not, but KK Downing has actually been involved in a little bit of the promotion for that. He recently did an interview with Talk Shop Live, an online selling group thing, and they promoted the vinyl release of Rock-a-Rolla with being autographed by the 4 original members, including the 3 guys currently in the band and himself. And during that interview, he mentioned that when they were putting this album together, he sat with Tom Allom and listened to the mixes of it, and the liner notes to the album have all new liner notes from the 4 original guys. So I'm just wondering, do you think, has there maybe behind the scenes been a little bit of the thawing of the tension between KK and the rest of the Judas Priest camp?
I would like to think that would be the case. Thank you, Brian. I would like to think that was the case, but I don't really know. I don't really think so. If you notice, I read some press on the Rock-a-Rolla reissue, and I talked about it, I think it was last week. All the interviews are separate. It's not like they're in the same room doing interviews. Like, you want to talk to KK about it, you talk to KK separately. KK's not sitting with Ian and Rob talking about, and Glenn talking about that record. It's separate. So, look, he's the founding member of the band, and if you're talking about the band's first record, he's somebody that they should absolutely include. So, a thawing, maybe to the degree that the Priest camp told the people who are issuing the record, oh yeah, you want to talk to KK, but we're not going to do it together with him. because that's certainly how it appears. I think you could say that there's a case to be made that maybe they're kind of chilling out between each other if, in fact, you saw or heard a video where they were all sitting in the same room, and that's not happened. But, just going back to his point about radio and Metal Shop and all of that, that's not uncommon in the world of radio to have hosts who are just voice people. That there's people behind these shows that do the music, do the programming, they cut everything together, they produce everything. And you have a voice talent that you find, and that person gets a script every week and they just read it. So maybe that's changed. Maybe Charlie is more hands-on and is really into metal and whatever. I don't know. But I've seen that a lot in my career. When I first started in radio, I was, I lost a gig temporarily because there was somebody at the radio station that I was working at as a kid who just needed air work and needed a shift, wanted to be paid. And they had no knowledge of hard rock or metal whatsoever. But suddenly they were doing a metal show. They had no clue, but they were doing it because they got a playlist and they pretended to be, totally into it. And look, maybe over time you grow into it, but it wasn't like what others do, including myself when I started, where, to this day, everything you hear is 100% me. Whatever I'm playing, whatever I'm saying, that was my mandate from day one, because I got into it not because I wanted to be heard on the radio, not because I was a broadcaster or had some sort of special voice. I got into it because I wanted to share the music with people. That was the only reason. But for a lot of other people, it's different. They don't care whether they're, in radio, most people they don't care if they're playing country, blues, rock, hip hop, R&B. I just want to be on the radio. Now, a lot of them care because they have a preference in music. You got to sit there 5 hours playing music. It's better if you like what you're playing. But the reality is 99% of people on the radio have nothing to do with what they play. They're broadcasters. They want to get paid. They want a shift. They want a job. And that also is in syndicated radio as well, where people are just voice people. So that's what I'm talking about with that. It's not a big secret. I mean, I know there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And it's like, you think that person's right there at your local radio station and totally immersed in this pile of records. I once had to host a blues show and a jazz show on the radio. In my career, there were weekend special shows that focused on that music, and the guy who was doing it was sick or couldn't make it or whatever. They called me up to do it. I'm like, I don't know anything about jazz or blues. Doesn't matter. All the music's laid out. Every fifth song, just say what they heard and say you're listening to Rockin' the Blues. And I did. I mean, I didn't elaborate all that much because I didn't know enough. Unlike when we're talking about rock and metal, I can't shut up about it because that's what I'm really wired for.